Hi, I'm Ryan Southern. I'm teaching the basics of using Puppet. We're going to go over the basics of the Puppet language and then how to set up serverless Puppet and a Puppet and agent setup. And then we're going to cover the Drupal integration of it. Like I said, I'm Ryan Southern. I'm actually a remote support technician at Savah Group. I've been there about a year and a half, and that's my my Twitter handle and then the Savah Twitter handle. If you have any questions, you can shoot them there if you feel like it. And I started using Puppet about a year and a half ago. What was I saying? And also, I apologize for my first presentation, so if I stop talking in the mic or something, please let me know. But like I said, I started using Puppet about a year and a half ago. It's very phenomenal. I'll go into what Puppet is. It's IT automation software. You can manage your infrastructure all the way from configuring to reporting, saying that you can apply the Puppet code to a node, and that's, you could do it on an existing server, you can do it on a new server that you're spinning up, whatever. And then reporting, there's many different reporting tools that allow you to essentially view all your nodes and see, what's installed on the nodes, what version it is. It's very good at controlling all your different servers that you're managing, and it's actually very highly scalable. You can use Puppet if you're managing one server or hundreds of servers. It's very good at scaling to whatever your needs are. Going into the basics of Puppet code, there's resources which go into classes which you can apply to the nodes. Resources is essentially just you're defining something. It can be anywhere from a file you can manage different files, a package, a user, a service. Really anything to do with your server you can manage with Puppet. But this is how the resources are defined. That's the file syntax, and there's actually a complete list of all the resources that you can have on the Puppet Labs documentation website. I believe that's later in the PowerPoint if you want to write it down. But again, it allows you to control all your different resources on your server, and you can control just about anything. This is again just an example of the file, and you can control the owner, the group, the mode, just about anything with the file or the service or package, whatever you want to control. And these go into classes. The classes are essentially just groups of resources. They're generally stored in modules, and a class, if you just if you've downloaded and installed the module on the server, it's not applied until the node calls it. So this is good if you have a Puppet master and agent. It allows you to control different types of servers. So you can have your application server, your web server, your MySQL server, and they can all be controlled by one Puppet master server, and it allows you to control each one of them differently. And with the classes, you can also put multiple resources. So if you're managing, for instance, users' SSH files, you could manage every single user's authorized keys or SSH config, and manage all of that within one class. And the modules, they can be found on Puppet Forge. The URL is forge.puppetlabs.com. Or you can, if you have Puppet installed, you can search from Puppet. Like I said earlier, the modules are essentially just or collection of classes. They allow you to to configure whatever you want on the server. On the Puppet forwards, there's modules for just about everything, whether it's Apache, MySQL, PHP. There's a very large variety of modules available. The nodes, each node you can apply different classes to, like I said earlier, and you can do a lot of different stuff with the nodes. When you define a node, you're including the classes. That's what the code right there means. So like that first one, it looks like it's a web server, and it includes the common packages, the Apache packages, and then Squid packages. And then the next node right there, the database server, and it includes the common packages and MySQL. And this is all done on the Puppet master server. And from there, there's a lot of different ways you can define nodes. You can actually use regular expressions to define nodes. So if if all of your web servers were named www.whatever, you can have a regular expression to apply all of these classes to your web servers. That allows you to scale your infrastructure very to thousands of servers potentially, and that's in the site.pp file. It's listed at the top of the screen. When you're applying when you're applying classes on a serverless node, they go into that file right there, and you essentially just say include class. There's different parameters that you can enter there that'll allow you to configure your services in different ways. And then you just Puppet apply that file name. On a master and agent configuration, it's essentially the same file, but again, there's different ways to define the nodes. This is an example of a database server, same one as earlier. And then there's also, I was talking about the parameters that you can have. This right here, the class NTP. You can essentially configure different services and packages like this. Generally, the modules will have documentation on what the flags are. So this one, it essentially turns off and stops the NTP service. On the agent, if you run Puppet agent with the test flag, it will it'll reach out to the master server, get all the configurations for its node, and then run it, and then it quits. Or if you just run Puppet agent, it starts a service and it fetches the configuration and makes sure the configuration is applied every half hour. And that's something you can configure in your Puppet settings. I'm going to go over setting up the serverless Puppet. It's really simple. You essentially add the repo. There's repos for all the different distributions. Some of them are provided by the distribution themselves, and some are provided by Puppet Labs. And then you essentially yum install Puppet, and that installs it. The configuration file is etc puppet config. And generally, the configuration is the default configuration for most instances is good. Every now and then you'll run into an issue where you have to set up a couple of different settings, but in general, the default configuration will work for serverless Puppet. And then you run this Puppet command, and it starts the Puppet service and make sure it's running. The master and agent is a little bit more difficult, mainly because you have to configure the master and agent to talk to each other. But again, on the master and the agent, you just add the repo and run the yum install command. The configuration Most instances, the only thing you need to change is the server address. And this is for basic Puppet integration. The host name is again generally the only thing you have to change. And then after you install it on both the agent and the master, you run Puppet agent test, and it reaches out to the master. And Puppet uses SSL to encrypt everything that the master and agent are when they're communicating. So you actually have to go on the master and approve the certificate. And you do that by just running Puppet cert list, and it'll give you a list of all of the pending certificate signing requests. And then you run Puppet cert sign and then the node's name, and it will sign and it's the SSL handshake. And then you can go back on the agent and run Puppet agent test, and it will connect to the agent then. Puppet and Drupal can be used Puppet can be used with Drupal for many different things. You can always use Puppet to manage your web stack, make sure that the PHP version is the same. There's actually 2 Drupal modules that are written already. Ben Ford 2K wrote one. I believe he actually wrote it for DrupalCon Portland and released it at Portland. But what it does is it actually uses the Puppet Labs Apache and MySQL and PHP modules, and on top of that, it adds Drupal integration, so you can quickly set up a Drupal site, and it will configure your entire web stack and your modules, your user accounts. It configures everything with Drupal. That can be used with spinning up test instances or something like that. If you're spinning up test instances all the time, you can just run a little bit of Puppet code and it will install everything for you. And then Eric Webb, he wrote another one. It's not as complete as the first one. It mainly installs Drush and configures your web stack. But past that, it doesn't have all that much Drupal integration. It does allow you to install Drupal, though. I don't believe it has module support yet. I'm not sure if it's in the roadmap or not, though. You can also, like I was saying earlier, with Puppet, it allows you to configure a large number of servers easily. With that, you can make sure that all of your servers are, they're up to date. They're running the same version of PHP, the same version of Apache settings, virtual host on Apache. It configures essentially everything for you. And with that, you can it saves a lot of time for the developer, because in the past we've an example for the company I work with, Savah Group. In the past we've always ran into issues where we forgot to add the php.ini file to bump the memory limit up, or we're not sure which version of PHP is installed on that server. So it allows us to make sure that all of our dev environments and production environments are the same. And does anyone have any questions? They're actually very similar. We actually went with Puppet over Chef because we felt like the community for Puppet was larger, and I actually forgot to add that slide. Puppet has some really great resources to get started or to continue to use Puppet. Puppet Labs is their documentation is very, very thorough. It covers everything that you can imagine with Puppet. But between Puppet and Chef, I believe it's really just a personal choice between which one you like better. Their code is written, I'm not sure what Chef is written in, but I believe Puppet's written in Perl. They're both in Ruby? Okay. So primarily they're both written in Ruby. I guess it's really just the amount of the community support for each of them. We felt that the Puppet community was better than the Chef one. Any other questions? To be honest with you, if you're running any server, it can be good for that. For instance, if you're just running one server, it allows you to easily just to manage all the stuff that you have applied, and you can look into the reporting of it, and it'll show you everything that's installed on your server. But it really just it depends on what you want to do. Personally, after probably one server, I would suggest implementing either Puppet or another automation software.
If I could follow up on that, my experience as a system administrator was that after I had a dozen nodes to manage, it was a little crazy maker. I was at close to 40 nodes before I actually implemented Puppet. I'm a little less crazy now. And in terms of, probably 25 of those nodes only have a common class on it, which is bringing in, NTP. I can't bring in my users because a lot of the legacy nodes, the UIDs and the GIDs don't match up, and so there's going to be a lot of work normalizing all that. But as soon as you find yourself going crazy dealing with unique snowflakes, where you're doing more forensic analysis to figure out what you left there the last time you touched that box before you could even make the change you logged on to deal with, it's past time to implement an automation scheme, Puppet or whatever, is from my experience.
Anyone else have any questions?
Question. How about ongoing change management? Like, I'm somewhat familiar with Chef, not as much with Puppet, but like for after your post installation, you've been running those for a while, now you need to deploy changes across a group of nodes. How well does Puppet enable mass configuration of already installed hardware?
If you could you go back to
this slide. Right here, when you're defining the nodes, these are on the Puppet master. If you actually want to, say, upgrade Apache to the next version, or whatever you want on this, you can actually go in here, and there's different flags you can use for perhaps version number or different configuration options. And once you do that, if you have the Puppet agent running, it fetches the configuration every half hour. So as soon as it hits that configuration, it's going to apply that change.
you have another?
Well, yeah, what is it doing behind the scenes there? So you bump the Apache version number in the config file. Is it running YUM? Is it,
That's actually defined in the module that you download, and different modules do it different ways. I believe that most modules will essentially, depending on what OS, will use either apt-get or yum to update that package. And then the configuration-wise, it controls that file. So it will it'll essentially just replace that file and then reload Apache or whichever service it affects.
The resources, the intent of Puppet is to abstract away the actual implementation. There's a sister application called Factor that will survey your nodes and determine the facts about that node. The fact is that this operating system is running a Debian and that one's running CentOS, and it will use those facts to determine the provider that's used to install a package, apt-get, yum, and that's all supposed to happen underneath the hood. You just say, I want a particular Apache at a particular version. I have found, though, that sometimes I have to write conditions in my classes that allow, that help Puppet do what I intend.
What are some resources that you would suggest looking at if we want to learn more?
Again, the documentation at Puppet Labs is phenomenal. They actually, I'm not sure the URL, but it's if you go to the Puppet Labs website at the top, there's actually a resources link. And they have a great getting started guide. It'll actually, there's a virtual machine that it provides you. And with that, it walks you through how to, first it does a serverless node. And it walks you through how to apply classes, how to write basic Puppet code, and then on top of that you can there's another VM, and it walks you through how to configure the master and agent server configuration, and everything you can do with that. So the Puppet Labs website is phenomenal about all that. And then I believe there's an IRC channel for Puppet, and I've used it quite a lot. And then it seems like, yes, books. I actually haven't read any of the books yet, but I hear they're very helpful with getting started or continuing to use Puppet. And also Puppet Forge, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of great modules there that people that have already written Puppet code will write them, and I mean there's modules for pretty much everything. Any other questions? I would highly suggest looking at those modules and trying them out yourself. I don't know that either of them are ready for production Drupal environments. It's just they're not quite there yet. But I believe it was that first one, Ben Ford 2K. I would suggest looking at that one over the Eric Webb one. It has more integration with Drupal as far as modules. You can actually enable or disable modules, install them, remove them, and that's I would highly suggest going with that one. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for attending this class.